Hi, this is Ken Gidge, and this is The Art of Politics. For those of you who have been watching The Art of Politics for about 8 months, you know that my partner has been Dave Robbins, a Republican, and I'm a Democrat. Well, Dave has decided to go out and do other things on television, and I thought, who could I get? I mean, who would do this? Come in and sit down and talk about politics, and there's only one name that came to me, and that was William O'Brien, but would he do it? And ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce new co-host, Bill O'Brien.
Thank you, Ken. I have big shoes to fill, and it's just not because Dave is about a foot taller than I am.
Yeah.
I'd been on the show before, and I enjoyed coming in.
Well, yeah, I like Dave, and Dave's going to be doing a lot more. We're going to see a lot more of Dave, but I really wanted to try to find somebody who was a lot smarter than me, not too much smarter. And then I came up and I thought of you, and I said, "Oh God, am I in trouble?" And I did mention, I was interviewed, and I did mention I'm only about 50% of where he is. I hope he is good to me.
Well, Ken, I used to do a lot of trial work, and whenever an attorney on the other side said, Mr. O'Brien's smarter than I am, I knew things were taking a turn for the worse. And so I'm not believing it, and I don't think the viewers are believing that.
That's right. Well, that happens to be factual. As you know, as people know, that you were the former or the Speaker of the House of Representatives here in New Hampshire, and you had a supermajority, and and then you lost it, and then you end up here. I mean, you're really going.
No, I hit bottom, and now this is the this is the ascendancy, isn't it, Ken? I mean, that's what you told me.
Yeah, it's like an escalator. Someone better turn it on. But how are you taking this? I mean, from the Speaker of the House of Representatives, the largest House of Representatives, and what, the third largest in the English-speaking world?
Oh, something like that. On a personal level, it's probably added to the quality of my life. Not having to go up to Concord every day, not having to work 60 or 70 hours a week added. I mean, that certainly is added quite a bit to the quality of my life. To say that there isn't a disappointment would be inaccurate. I think we had achieved many of the things that we hoped to achieve. We had other goals in front of us. There's a disappointment in not being able to pursue those goals, but overall, it's all good.
Well, I mean, I'm glad you're sitting here, but I'm glad you're not the Speaker. I mean, we need a Democrat up there, and we have a Democrat back up there.
Sure.
But could you see from a supermajority to a minority? I mean, did that ever occur to you that this could or would happen?
Certainly, it's not strange to any of us who spent the last decade or two in New Hampshire politics to come across these swing elections, these elections such as we had in 2006 and 2008, 2010, even earlier than that, where the state is swinging back and forth from one party to the other. So, is it totally surprising? No, it isn't. Is it understandable in terms of having a swing election? Sure. These wave elections are something that is a phenomena that we have encountered, and we will probably still encounter it for a time in New Hampshire.
Well, you've been, I would say, a lightning rod for so many things that have upset the Democrats and some of your, even in the Republicans. I mean, you really had, it was almost like a mission. What was your ultimate, when you first became the speaker or just before that, where were you headed? What exactly did you want to do? What was the fire that not only came into you, but got everyone else upset on one side and pleased on the other side?
Well, you know, for the life of me, I can't understand why they were upset on the other side. So I can't describe their motivation or their reaction to what we were trying to do. On our side, I think what motivated a lot of us is an understanding that to be a New Hampshire state representative, you're not pursuing a career, you're pursuing public service. And in the case of many of us, we had a goal, and the goal was to begin to bring New Hampshire government in line with people's expectations of not having new taxes, not raising taxes, living within our means. Having a government that was less intrusive than what it had been, and certainly where it was heading. And so you ask, you know, what were your goals? My goal was to provide whatever leadership I could in reaching that. You know, if I had personal goals involved in this, it would have been probably to, you know, accept the fact that I've been in a couple of terms and then get out and go pursue my career, which was, you know, sort of legal career, which is sort of winding down as I wasn't showing attention to it. But those civic goals seemed important enough that I stepped forward because I thought I could do a good job.
Well, it's interesting how you stepped backwards, because you could have been, I believe, probably the minority leader. Why didn't you pick that up?
Because there are capable people in the minority caucus this time who can fully perform the role that I otherwise would have. It never was personal. It never was. Even as I'd hear the criticism, I didn't take it personally. But in terms of goals, you know, do I have to now be, you know, the head of the minority leader of the caucus because I used to be speaker? It always came down to what's best for the caucus. Is there someone else who can do this? And if I couldn't answer that question unequivocally by saying, no, I'm the right person for the right time, then I ought to step back. That's what I did.
Well, you certainly did. In fact, you could have probably sat any way you wanted to, but you chose way in the back next to the door where you can run out.
Well, you know, I'm respectful of the decorum of the House, so I wouldn't run in the House.
I know that.
No, I mean, I always was in the back when I was a backbencher, literally. I was in the, you know, last row or two. Actually, both times before I became speaker, I was
I'm asking
in the row. And so, no, I'm more comfortable there. It allows me to get up and talk with people without, you know, standing in front of
Well, I know
others.
that before I asked you the question, I really knew the answer, simply because you're a person who sits down very little. You're a person who's constantly moving, constantly talking with individuals. So you're very, very active. I don't think people realize that. They may not see you where Chandler is, but for us there, sitting there, we know you're working.
Well, certainly if I can contribute at all to assisting the Republicans in the House in keeping their message in front of the people of New Hampshire, I'm going to do that. You know, ours is a strong message. It's a traditional message. It's one that I think that the people have a right to have in front of them at all times, this message of limited government and low taxes. And the way we do it as a member of the minority in the House this time is by working hard on our debates, making sure that we're getting votes recorded so that when we go back to the people, we can demonstrate who we are and who the opposition was. And, you know, if I can provide any, you know, it's my 4th term up there. 1 term was as a speaker. If I can provide any insight to members as session days go on to how to do that, yeah, I will.
There's a lot of criticism about you, and in many ways, everybody wants small government. Everybody wants, to a degree.
I'm not sure if that's the case.
Well,
Some people, and it's okay. There's different visions of government, and there's one vision that says government should be activist. Government should reflect a desire on the part of someone in society to reform society, to change society, to act out their beliefs. I don't agree with that, and there's a lot of us that don't. But it's okay. People shouldn't call themselves, for example, fiscal conservatives when they're not. They may well be fiscal activists. What we need is people to debate that rather than run from that.
But to go back just for a moment, and then this is sort of get to know each other, but still, I want to get this out. Just to go back, it's interesting that you would say this is what people want. Well, that's not what people wanted. People took a supermajority that you had and just switched it right around.
Well, what was it? That's a terribly simplistic analysis of what happened.
It takes a long time to...
Yeah, I mean, there's various ways to look at it. If you look at all the votes that were cast, and you check this out, you're not going to believe me when I tell you, but you check this out. You check all the votes that were cast for all the representatives in the 2012 election in New Hampshire, and you'll find that 51.4% of the votes were votes for Republicans. Now, those are in multi-districts, and that means that a number of Republicans really achieved many more votes than they needed to win, and Democrats tended to win with smaller margins. So that's how that is understandable. But it was, and moreover, you will find that when you look at the 49 districts in which there were one-on-one races between Democratic representative candidates and Republican representative candidates, you will find that in all of those instances, the Republican candidates exceeded the vote that our presidential candidate received and that our gubernatorial candidate received. So it wasn't that there was a rejection of what we were doing in the agenda in the House so much as that we had a ballot, candidates on the ballot above us that underperformed. And as you well know, and didn't get elected. They didn't get elected. As you know, Ken, when we run for representative, how many people really know when they go into the ballot box, a ballot station, who you are, who I am? Maybe me now more because I've been speaker, but certainly when I ran in 2004, 2006, 2008. Even in Mount Vernon, New Boston, there are probably a third of the people had ever heard of me. What they tended to do was vote Democrat because the Democrat Party represents who they are. Or vote Republican because the Republican Party votes the way they want. Or they would vote on other criteria. What's very important is where they start off in the ballot. Are they voting for the Democratic presidential candidate, or are they voting for the Republican presidential candidate?
Are you surprised that it went to Barack Obama?
In New Hampshire? I was surprised over the margin. I knew it was a toss-up state and that he could certainly take it. But
as a Democrat,
I was surprised.
I thought we lost it.
Yeah, I was surprised over the margin, and I think it might have reflected, as I've said on a number of interviews, a number of shows. I think it reflected a technically superb effort on the part of the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is to be congratulated. They were able to not only identify their base and get it out well and choose wedge issues that really motivated part of their base, but they were able to identify individuals who weren't on the radar of any of us, certainly not Republicans, unregistered voters, and figure out what motivated those and get them in. We had that 100,000 new registrants.
I can tell you at Ward 6, I think there was 800, which was actually they were coming out the door, and there was a line. It never happens, but we are because the auditorium is very large, and there's plenty of room. And I said, "What's going on?" And they said that people who are registering to vote. And I said, "That's impossible." And that was something that surprised me.
It surprised all of us. Surprised us so much, and you've probably heard this. If not, well, maybe I'm more candid than I should be. But to the point that when I was at the polls that day, on election day, and obviously I was taking care of my own district, but calling around the state, how's it going, what are you seeing, and so forth, there was some enthusiasm on the part of the Republican candidates because they're saying, you know, we're seeing a lot of new registrants coming in, and usually it's the party that's out of power, not in the state house, but in the presidential election, that gets hurt by a lot of new registrants, a big turnout. So there was an expectation this bodes well for us. It was the exact opposite, and it was because the Democratic Party did a technically proficient job, a great job of doing something that's very traditional, which is turn out the vote.
Well, also your candidate for the presidency with the 47%, and it just was awful at the end. I mean, the comments that he was making, he honestly probably could have become president if he would have just said, look what I've done in Massachusetts regarding health care.
Oh, he could have done that. He could have pushed a little bit more competently some of his achievements. He could have gone after the president, what was it, the last debate when the issue of Benghazi came up. He certainly could have. He certainly could have.
Benghazi.
You know what? It's much more of a legitimate issue than whether or not we pay for free contraception in medical, $5 a month. And the Democrats developed that into a war on women, whether there's a $5 a month benefit in medical insurance plans.
Wasn't it a Republican who said, for instance, your man, I would imagine, the big mouth on radio, who said, well, if we're paying for her contraceptive, we'd like to see her on the internet?
There's a lot of crass, stupid things that are said, and what the Democrats do a great job of is ignoring the crass, insensitive, stupid things that are said by their representatives.
Oh, we didn't say anything. And we were very good.
And then paint the Republicans with whatever stupidity that, one of 10,000 candidates across the country will say, sure, stupid remark.
Well, it was dumb, I think, for everyone. Now, we have a talk show. It's your talk show, my talk show. We were talking a little bit before where we would like to go, and I hope everyone understands that we're not just going to be local. We will be talking national. We will be talking about some international stuff because guess what? It affects us. We have soldiers, around the world. But tell us, where would you like to go? I haven't really talked to you. What do you think? What would you like to do here?
Can I make a shameless plug for you?
Go ahead.
I heard, this is only over the last couple of days, that you were on Chronicle and that your art was being discussed, and it was a great show, and congratulations. You're the TV star.
Yeah,
and
I'm checking my wallet. Now I'm checking my wallet.
No, but congratulations on that, Ken.
Well,
I heard it was a great. I haven't seen it, and I'm going to try to see it, but I heard it was a great show.
Well, I got to tell you, this art that I'm doing is really new, new type of art form, and Chronicle came down, and you don't know how these things are going to turn out, and it was so good because I talked about Jackson Pollock, and they had a picture of him in there, and they had the 60s music. I mean, I was a hippie. I mean, I looked like, I'm on LSD doing this stuff. But I never thought of it.
It still came across well.
Yes, but I did. He's already got it, Richard. Don't worry. We're going to work out fine. But I got to tell you, I called them up, and I said, you did a wonderful job, except for that awful-looking person who you had to interview.
It must have been really discouraging when they agreed with you.
Well, Richard, I need some help. But it was nice, and that's nice. But as we know, because your wife is an artist.
She is. Yeah.
And we were talking about that before. Art's hard. It's very, very difficult.
Yes.
All publicity that one can get. It's hard to make a living.
It's hard to make a living, and having lived now with an artist for many years, it's really hard to get it out there and to get the validation that I think is so important, that you're doing something that other people understand and appreciate and adds quality to their life, adds some new dimensions to their life. So congratulations. I mean, that's great that you're able to do it.
Well, it was, and I really appreciate it. I thought Chronicle did a good job. They did just a good job. I didn't look at it as myself. I looked at it as how they put it together, and it was just excellently done. And I think up here in New Hampshire, we've got Chronicle, especially one of the programs that really does this state good. Fritz Weatherby and and his group.
So now that I've softened you up, you asked me how I wanted the show to go. Would it be all right if you just have Republicans on, or?
Richard, I need some help.
I softened you up.
No. Well, let me soften you up. Because I don't like your politics. Most of the time I didn't like your politics, but I always respected you. And there was never a time where I didn't ask to speak with you that you were available for me. I did catch you a couple of times, but no, you were always very good. But one thing that historic what you did, and I don't think you haven't got credit for it, I think you should, and that is that you're the first Speaker of the House to let basically computers, which were the tablets, be introduced into the House of Representatives. Now, when I had my tablet, before you said it was okay, we were told to turn them off.
Yeah, and so the concern there is that people are being distracted from the debate, and I shared that concern with probably Speaker Norelli before I became Speaker, and other speakers before her. But I sat down, and I can't remember if I talked with you, but I certainly talked with others, and began to understand how it could add to the quality of our session days, and it really does. Now I'm sitting next to Representative Nelson Mary Nelson from Nashua. And she uses a tablet and uses it the way we hoped it would be used, to look up legislation as it's being discussed on the House floor, to look at the docket, when did it come up. If there's a citation to a statute, we're going to be amending the statute. She has the ability to go right in and look at that statute. And so it makes us better representatives. I had a little bit of concern. I used to teach law school, and I remember the first class I taught, I prepared a lot, and all the computers are there from the students, and they're all working away at it. I thought to myself, I am brilliant. I'm doing a great job here. Look at they're tapping away. They're taking down my every word. And so near the end of the long classes, it was about a 2-hour class, I think, a little under it. Near the end of it, I called up some students to do a presentation. I walked to the back of the room and kind of looked. And it was all, like a bunch of Facebook and playing games, and there was, solitaire and all that. So there's always a concern that people would be distracted. But, I think there's much less concern in the House because there's a lot of dedicated. You're dealing with volunteers, and they're not going to be there just wasting their time.
I have right here. This is a computer that happens to have a phone. It used to be a phone. With 4G, I can Skype. Literally, my son's now here in the U.S., going back to China. I can literally Skype him, see his picture. He can see me. I mean, we've got to the point where the technology is so up, and you are sitting with Mary Nelson, and she certainly knows how to use a computer. So what she's doing is something that she couldn't do before.
That's right.
So, and not only that is, you stop sending out or publishing as many calendars.
Well, that's right. We used to, every week when we were in session, we would send out these calendars that had the minority and majority committee reports on bills that were going to be coming up, notices to the representatives, scheduling of hearings and so forth. And if I remember correctly, it was costing about $40,000 a year to do it, just in postage alone, let alone the printing costs. And
postage.
So, just postage alone. So, we ended up, with some discomfort and a great deal of flexibility on our part, trying to move people out of getting those every week to, can't you look it up online? And, if you come in a session day, you can grab a copy and so forth. It saved quite a bit. My hope was that if I became Speaker, we were going to see if we could put into the budget, reflecting that cost savings and some other savings I had in mind, a program where we would give every representative and lend it to them, not give it away.
Lease it.
A tablet. Now that means that many of them have iPads. They're not going to walk around with
Correct.
2 of them. So you know, we were going to do a survey. My hope was that it would be somewhere on 150 to 200 that we would have to hand out, which would be less than the amount of money that we used to spend in postage, and would allow each one of them the opportunity to, you know, do what Mary's doing now, Mary Nelson's doing now, which is, you know, to get on the floor and be a better representative because of the immediate availability of
Well, that's
information.
you, and I did. You know, you and I are going to argue about a lot of stuff, but to be sitting there with a tablet and having one of the people come up literally, and first of all, they started with Hunt, Representative Hunt, who was in the computer business, so he's like probably the first tablet. And you know, probably in a government, for God's sakes. I mean, he's always said something. They told him to turn his off, and then they told me to turn mine off. And I thought, but I'm not using paper. But now, to see that transition, it's really, as I said, this is not a phone anymore. This is a computer with a phone. It used to be a phone that had a little computer in it. So that is very important. I know it's just a little thing historically, but guess what? You're right. I can look up these bills. I can, in fact, this right here, now I can read the bills. In other words, I can go to a bill and it will speak the bill to me. So I have now got to the point where the bills I have to do in committee, I listen to them twice. So, and that's, think about it. So now I can be better at what I'm doing.
Right. And so, you know, the concern I had, even knowing all this, concern I have is that people might start using them in disruptive ways. Not disruptive in terms of effectiveness, but disruptive, like, you know, there'd be music going, somebody go to Pandora, or there'd be calls coming in, or you know, they'd start playing a movie or something like that. Haven't seen any of that. I mean, every representative has been very, very responsible. And again, I think it's because of the nature of what the New Hampshire House is. We're a bunch of volunteers. We're not up there with very few exceptions. To do anything other than try to be as effective as we can while we're there. And that allows people to be more effective.
Well, you mentioned Mary Nelson. She only has an IQ of about 300, so you better be very careful. She will have you voting like a Democrat, maybe, or are you?
I won't even say anything that would even approach getting Mary in trouble about who's going to influence.
What you're really saying is you don't want to get her mad. That's
Besides, if she has an IQ of 300, that goes way beyond my ability to even understand an IQ that high, let alone
you're lucky.
deal with it.
She's really a nice person.
She's a great person. We're enjoying each other's company.
She's been in local politics here, and just a sweetheart. One of those people who really help everybody out. So.
And obviously generous person, but she's obviously a very nice person. She'll mention, you know, various people, and she comes across as a very caring individual. So. And
I don't think, you know, what the show is basically tonight is just to get to know one another and have you get to know the former speaker, representative, and myself, how we're going to get along. So this is going to be a little. I'm not too sure how it's going to work, but so far you zinged me. I've got it right here. You've zinged me 3 times. I got you once.
I saw you keeping that list there.
Believe me, I am. But for you, so your seatmate basically is probably one of the most interesting people, because seatmates are really important to who you sit next to, et cetera. Like now, what the new speaker has done is they put Republicans and Democrats are all next together.
Now, you know I suggested that to her. Maybe you didn't know.
Yes, I...
and so when I became Speaker, I decided let's break down the barriers, and suggested to current Speaker Norelli, who was the Minority Leader then, why don't we just mix it up? Why don't we think of something different? Sit people by their committees, sit them, just alternate them around, just do something. And her response to me was, Bill, please don't do that. We're in the minority. Don't do that to us.
Wow, really? I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. And so, in respect of her concerns, I didn't do it.
Well, she's doing it now, and I can tell you, I'm having a great time. I thought because the way it was set up, of course, when bills come up, you sometimes want to talk it over with a person next to you, which is usually a Democrat, in my case, Republicans. But now it's really fun. And this is one way where I think that we have just missed the social aspect of it. We joke back and forth. And I've got Baldessaro right behind me, which this guy can't whisper. I mean, he's a very happy, good-natured person, and
Representative Al Baldessaro from Londonderry is having he always has a great time.
oh yeah,
Seems very, very hardworking.
Oh yeah,
representatives.
Gidge, how did you vote? None of your business. Get back there. So we're having a great time, and I'm glad that that whole thing is, because we've got to get more social. Now, you were there, and it was so. What can I say? It was kind of
something nice.
Pardon me?
What can you say? Something nice.
No, I'm not. It was not for Democrats. It was so much tension.
Yeah, but I think it might have been produced out of the minority. You know, one of the incidents that occurred right at the beginning of my speakership that led me to understand that there was going to be a confrontational minority was I took my parking space. The speaker, as you know, gets, I suppose you'd say, the premier parking space. It's right in the covered parking in a legislative office building right next to the door that goes into the main lobby. And so I decided that what I would do is park on session days. On any days, I'd park over at the same parking lot across Main Street from the State House, where stores parking, stores parking. And so I gave my parking space to the longest serving member of the House, who was a Democrat. I gave it to Representative Laura Penelakis. And she came and thanked me for it. And then about a week or so later, even before, I think maybe we'd had a session day, I mean, nothing had really happened, nothing had come up. She wrote a letter to the Portsmouth Herald talking about what an evil person I was, and how this was such an abusive speaker and everything. And I realized this is going to be the theme.
Well,
Vladimir,
of course, you flattened her tires, from what I understand, because I'm only joking.
Vladimir Lenin said that a lie repeated becomes reality. This idea that somehow we were any different or dealing with representatives any different is the accepted reality. And I've seen it, references to it on the House floor this session. But it wasn't reality other than based upon repetition.
Well, I can tell you what you probably didn't see, because you're at one position, I was at another position. There were some awfully rude people, and one thing, I've told this story before, I'm in an elevator, and this Democrat is an older lady, very small, and two Republicans, and this was the first day, and they started in on what they were going to do to the Democrats. And and she's sort of moving back a little.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
So she went to, they all want to get off at the third floor, I think. I put my hands in front of them. I stopped them, let her out. We went up one floor, and by the time we came down, to their credit, they ran and they found her. And they said, look, we're really sorry. We didn't mean it that way.
Right.
So that was the type of...
Yeah. It was certainly a majority that reflected a lot of new members. As you remember, we had 163 out of the 297 members who were new. When you have that many new members come in, you have a loss or a diminution, not a loss, of institutional memory. And part of the institutional memory was decorum. How do you conduct yourself? How do you deal with people?
Yes.
What kind of respect do you show? And so, it takes time to recapture that. And I think, obviously we're seeing it done now. Those members, those 163 who are still with us, I think, would understand that that's not an appropriate. Any one of them would understand it's not an appropriate way to talk to another representative.
And over the years, I've made friends with. I have really I've got as many enemy Democrats as I have Republicans to a degree, or friends. And I'll tell you that that has changed. There has it had to. In fact, I think you said it yourself. Your job was herding cats.
Feral cats, I think.
Yeah.
Wildcat. And I was surprised, though, the amount of challenges. And I think, Ken, you'd have to say, in all candor, if you would, that the minority leadership last term was much more assertive in challenging the speaker than the minority leadership this time. And I think they did it as a way of trying to kind of knock us off kilter. You know, I was, for example, on the House floor, and if there was a challenge to a ruling, I was going to the House clerk just like Terry Norelli did. And I wasn't making things up. I'd go to the House clerk and say, you know, what's the right thing to do here? And presumably rely on the same advice that Terry's getting now and got
Right or
before,
wrong,
right or
yeah.
wrong, I
Yeah,
assume
yeah,
is
I
right.
know that, yeah.
And yet there'd be challenges to the chair and votes and all that. Well, after a while, particularly when you get 163 new members, many of whom are people that I recruited, many of whom were people who voted for me for speaker, there's going to start to be an adversarial atmosphere. You know, why do you keep on pressuring this guy?
Well, you were, look, let's face it, you were, come on, I can remember with one Republican missing from our committee, all of a sudden one would run in and sit down. Not that that's should have been done before. I think after seeing that, I believe that that's the way it should be done. But I mean, I remember one day, God, you must have 8 people in there.
The speaker appoints and reappoints to committee, and as we have heard one of our representatives say yesterday and many times, and when we as a minority experiencing it now, elections have consequences. And if in fact you're speaker, you have an obligation to make sure that committees are fully staffed for votes, and if you can replace somebody. Moreover, any time I was requested by minority leadership to replace somebody who was missing from their party, I replaced that person. You know, so they complained about replacements, and then kind of in the background constantly asked for replacements.
Well, I remember walking down the hallway and someone said, "You're a Democrat, come and sit down." I said, I didn't know. I didn't know I had to vote or something. They said, "How do you vote?" I said, "I don't know. How do I vote? Which one's a Democrat here? I'm not sure."
Right.
But now we're here. We have a talk show, and we're both trying to figure out where to go. Now, I think we talked about earlier that it would be nice if we talked about international issues because it does affect people, soldiers, et cetera, and what's taking place. National, obviously, speak about the Senate and the House, the federal, and also then come around this way. So we're going to try to mix it up quite a bit. And what guest would you like? What guest would you like to bring?
You know, I really want to bring folks in that will not so much talk about the contest of politics, but the policies of politics. You know, that's what really interests me. You know, I really don't care about who's up, who's down, whose numbers look good. I really do care about such things as what is a proper amount of money going to the arts, for example. You know, how do we decide that? I'd really like to know how we approach business. Do we have a common understanding of what public policy should be to business, and if we do, and to the extent we do, what are the common policies that we share in trying to promote? I really am interested more than anything, Ken, in seeing if we can keep a discussion along the lines of where do we come together? You know, where is a way that we can make government better for the people, rather than just sort of screaming at each other and, you know.
Well, you did make a suggestion, and that was to bring people in who have changed from a Republican, changed a vote to voting on a Democrat, a Democrat voting for a Republican. Well, I mean, issues.
Yeah, wouldn't that be interesting? I mean, because we all know on each of our, up in the legislature, in each of our caucuses, there's groups of representatives from our own party who tend to, you know, not vote with the leadership all the time.
Yes.
Tend to be a little bit dissident. I'd love to bring those people in and say, what's common among you two or your groups? And you know, why are you doing this? And, 90%, 95% of those who are there not doing it. It's not that I agree with them. In many instances, I don't agree with them. But I'd love to understand the philosophy, for example, that has someone saying, I'm going to run as a Democrat, but, when it comes to core Democrat issues, I'm just not with the party on those, or a large number of them.
Well, there are a few of those. I probably, Dave Robbins brought in this gun book, and I was the best Democrat in the state of New Hampshire who voted Republican. And I thought, that's awful. I said, I have the people who voted for me, they're going to throw me out. It was 17%, and it was like
I was going to say, it's relative. It's just like bringing in the worst nun who's a sinner, It's probably not anything bad going on.
I like that, nun who's a sinner.
There's probably not anything really bad going on there.
You've already elevated this the show to another level.
No, I mean, there's a representative I can think in your caucus now who in a couple of core votes has surprised us.
Name me.
We'll talk to him first. We'll talk to him first.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, and I don't want to cause his life to be difficult, but I'd love it if he'd come in, and you could probably, and I certainly can think of folks in my caucus who, if push comes to shove on some of these core issues, tends to, go to the Democrat side of them. And I'd love to, what's going on there? Why didn't you run as a Republican? Why didn't you run as a Democrat? I think it could make for some interesting discussions.
Comments from people when they told you would be doing this show. Anybody say anything to you?
No, not too much. The few that did seem to think this is a great idea, that we need a little bit more of this, not explain it to them. No. I think your reaction might have been a little bit different.
Oh yes. The Democrats couldn't believe it that I would do this, bring another Republican on, especially you, because of the energy, etc. And I thought to myself, look, if we're ever going to get anything done, I just hope I'm smart enough to get it out of you, or you get it out of me, and we get it out of our guests to exactly how everyone feels. And I don't think that's bad TV.
I think it'd be great. I think it'd be great TV, and I think it'll be a worthwhile exercise. Might I suggest you're not viewed as the most partisan member of the Democratic caucus, and so maybe that's why when you're not, and yet I am viewed as being quite partisan on the Republican side. So that could be explaining part of the difference in reaction. And plus, I was speaker, and as you said, tended to be a lightning rod. If anything happened up there that somebody didn't like, it wasn't, me finding out about it at the same time they did. It was me causing it. And so there's this tendency to think that somehow I was and remain the Svengali of all Republican partisan politics up there. So,
well, you had a lot of the people who worked with you that were leaders for you, who probably, a lot of what people thought about you probably came from them, because some of these people were not nice. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean it in a political way.
Right.
They're very pushy.
Right.
And we know that. That's on both sides.
That is on both sides. And
plus,
we had some committee leadership that was trying out those roles for the first time. I'm not sure if you're aware that of all the standing committees we have, how many are there? Was it 22, 23, somewhere around there? We only had 3 committee chairmen who had been a committee chairman before. That's what happens when you're out for a while. So, there were a lot of rough edges there, and people who we'd have to bring in saying, you can't conduct a hearing that way.
Until this very moment, if somebody had been up there for 2 years and as a minority, 103 to 297, come on.
Right.
I never thought of it that way. You did have a lot of new people in there who basically had to learn.
Sure. So you look at the 297, 163 were just absolutely new, and so you take the remainder, which if you can quickly do the math, which is 133.
Don't look at me.
Yeah, 134 were returning representatives, Some of those were only second year, even though I went to some of them for leadership. But
Yeah.
you're dealing with a limited number of people you could put into leadership roles. And some just didn't have experience. Some you certainly I would look at, understand as I'm appointing them, it's going to be tough. You know, that person, excuse me, doesn't have the personality that may be an ideal fit for being in a role where they have to tell people, yes, you can talk now, no, you can't talk. Here's how I'm going to move bills forward. So we had to work with a number of them. In a couple instances, and certainly your party used it very well, I'd have to remove them. There was one instance where I can remember a representative wouldn't have a hearing on a bill that exceeded, and it was an important bill, 5 minutes, and I had to bring them in and say, that's not the way we conduct ourselves here, and I'm going to, move you into a different role now. I can't have you doing that. Nothing ideological. It's just that's not the way, to deal with the public.
See, I never saw that, because what's at this point is very important, because if you were on the other side of myself, which had never occurred to me because I'm in commerce and we've always had Hunt.
Yeah.
And he's almost always the smartest person in the room. He just happens to be a Republican. So when you put Hunt,
Right.
then you added Jen Coffey,
Right.
which was, she's a little rough around the edges, but smart. There's no question about that. So I never thought of it in those terms. But I can imagine, because there were changes.
And so some of
And so it just confuses things. It gets the conversations, and all of a sudden it rolls up and it's larger than what it really is.
Yeah, so someone such as Ken Hunt, you can put into that role, and he's been there, he knows how to do it, he has good personal skills in dealing with individuals, and part of the theory there in that particular instance is to put a Jen Coffey with a John Hunt, so later on, she's second-term member, I think, at the time, so she can learn from the person. That was ideal. That was one of the returning chairmen. There were other instances where I'd have to put people in who were new members, new leaders, second-term members. They did great. There were some instances where I'd put people in who hadn't been in leadership before, and they just really caused some issues we had to deal with. Public doesn't like to hear politicians complain, but certainly I'd sit there and go, geez, come on, guys, why are you hitting me when all I'm trying to do is get better leadership in the committees?
Well, I do hope up here in New Hampshire they realize we don't get paid anything. It costs us money to do this job.
Yeah.
So hopefully they listen a little bit more. I mean, I certainly have changed. How I started really in politics was interviewing politicians over the radio. Mm-hmm. So I thought I knew everything. I mean, from 2 vice presidents, one became president, senators, congressmen from all around. So I thought I had some idea. Oh, no. Once you get in there in these committees, and once you get out on the House floor, and then how bills go through, and then how it works so well, and then it gets to the Senate, and they're having a bad day, and it comes back. I mean, and then the governor goes, well, no, I don't think so, and vetoes it, and here we go again.
And there's this assumption that there's a few people there like pulling all the strings and everything, and you realize there may be some strings, but a lot of them are just cut. Some of them have been lost. Some of them never had strings attached to them, so you can't control them at all. It kind of, as you're talking, it reminds me of when I was a young lawyer. Just out of law school, I was a law clerk to the Chief Justice of the Massachusetts Superior Court. So I'd sit in on trials and advise trial judges on legal issues that come up. But I'd watch the lawyers trying cases, and I'd be sitting there going, that's pretty easy, I can do that. Until I got on my own, feet on my own, and tried to try a case. And
That's right.
It's very different.
That's right.
It's very, very different.
I think New Hampshire's been very, very lucky.
I think so.
Very, very fortunate. Governor, now, I know you would have preferred a Republican at this particular point. We won't get too much into that because it's your opinion.
I think that she's done a terrible job presenting the budget. Just technically, I think it's unacceptable that her budget doesn't have the trailer bill with it. And I think a lot of people who watch Concord know that the budget comes in 2 parts. It's House Bill 1 and House Bill 2. House Bill 1's all the figures, and anybody can put figures together. House Bill 2 actually has the proposed legislation that makes the budget work. And so we've never, she had an obligation by February 15th to present us a budget, and I question whether or not she's met that obligation, not having provided us House Bill 2.
Well, we just agreed that it takes a little while to get, involved with everything, and she was a senator who lost her campaign, took 2 years off, came back. Were you surprised she became governor?
I was surprised that she did as well as she did, but as we got closer to the election, I realized that she was very, very effectively defining herself as a fiscal conservative when she so certainly was not, and more importantly, defining Ovid Lamontagne as somehow a very radical individual, which he is not. And so it didn't surprise me at all to see her win the race.
Well, how much out-of-state stuff did, I mean, there was a lot of attacks on her for not paying taxes on a house.
There was a lot of money that came in. I think both sides would agree that the amount that either candidate raised paled in consideration, in comparison rather, to the amount that came in on their behalf or against the others. It was.
That's never going to stop. I don't care what we do. I don't care what laws we make. It's always going to take place. Just, I don't know, I hate to say just open the floodgates and let everybody do what they want to do, because that's almost what they're doing now. I mean, when it was the Supreme Court says that a corporation is a person.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I understand the reason for that ruling. I mean, basically saying corporations are just collections of individuals. And so if you deny them a right to speak, you're denying the collection of individuals. You can argue that one way or the other.
So corporations should have a vote?
No, because each individual does.
I know that.
So it's a different issue. But I guess I wrestle with it too, because there is this First Amendment right to speak, and the right to speak, as the old case is Buckley versus Valero. It was William F. Buckley's brother when he, I guess Valero was the head of one of the chairman of the FEC, and in that case, the Supreme Court said, made the clear ruling and the commonsensical ruling that the right to speak means the right to finance your own speech. And so that's the reason why the federal government can't prevent any individual from spending as much money as that individual wants on his own race, because we have a right to finance our own speech.
With our own money.
With our own money.
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
And so you go, well, that makes sense. And then you say, but we're going to prevent money from being given by other individuals to that person so he can speak. That really kind of favors the rich, doesn't it?
Yes.
Because if you're Michael Bloomberg and for some reason or another, you think that you should spend $100 million on becoming mayor of New York, which is, what do you spend, like 80 to 100 million?
I know.
It was a huge amount. That really is unfair, to a normal person.
I don't always agree with him, but I think he's done a darn good job, to be honest.
Oh, he could, but that, and you may well or may well not have.
Certainly a businessman.
Certainly anybody that can put together, as I think he did, a life of success that allows you to throw $100 million on a race for mayor of some city is a person who's going to be generally capable of doing any number of things. That doesn't make it good, that he can do that and you and I can't. Moreover, we can't go to some other rich person and say, you know what, I think I'd make a better mayor of New York than Michael Bloomberg. Can you give me $100 million to do it? And the federal government would say, no, Michael can spend $100 on his race, but Soros can't give you $100 million, so you can do it.
Talking about $100 million, $1 billion to be president?
$1 billion, yeah.
Isn't that absolutely $1 billion here, $1 billion there? I mean,
right.
Why don't we just pass a law where you can buy somebody's vote? I mean, it would be not only cheaper, but
I don't know.
Call me up. I'll buy it for $100. No, I mean, isn't that what it's coming down to practically?
How much do we spend on cat food every year? Don't you think the amount?
I knew it.
Don't you think the amount we spend?
How you got up the cat food? Congratulations.
You don't think electing a president is important as the amount of money we? amount we spend on
Let's get
gas
down to mice here in New Hampshire. I used to be able, or someone, not just putting the name up, but maybe $400, $500. I spent $3,000, and I've never worked so hard. That's for a, you know, I mean.
Ken, I'm so glad we gave you a run for your money there.
So you were the one back and the others. Yeah, all right. Well,
you could have coasted in. Ken, it was you. You didn't have to spend $3,000.
Yeah, right. It was me coasting in. You watched the show and now you're part of it.
Yeah.
You know I need a little bit more than coasting. That's for sure. And how did you do up there in your part of the world? I mean,
you know, I was told, and because it sounds so nasty, I'm going to choose to believe it, that there were two full-time workers for my opponent put in by the unions into my little district. Starting after the primary, there's one full-time. After the sign-up, there's one full-time, and after the primary, 2 full-time workers. And so I worked my district very hard. I probably went to 2 towns. Went to probably about 80% of the houses in Mount Vernon and about 60% of those in New Boston. Mount Vernon's about half the size of New Boston. And managed to win, I don't know, by about 70 votes or something like that.
Do you know that last time I became the top vote getter in my ward, I beat Campbell by 1, which,
Did you really?
which I mean,
Good.
That's awful. Actually, he wasn't there because he was out attempting to, as you know, running for speaker just in case we became the majority. And so I did, you know, he couldn't do as much as he could do. And believe me, Dave, all he'd have to do was stand there for another 15 minutes and he could have got 100 more votes over me. But watching the process and how it has taken place and watching what you have done and where you are, like right now on this TV show, that it doesn't mean the escalator has started and gone up, but I think we can have some fun here. I think you and I are going to get along. I know that there are some Democrats out there who criticize me already for this. How could you do that? And I said, well, you know, I've invited you to come on the show.
I was going to say, invite him on. Oh,
yeah.
Have him come on.
No,
be great.
no, I don't think so. Yeah. And I think it has been said that it's going to be easier for you to get guests than it's going to for me to get guests. Well, you want to know something? If the Democrats don't want to come on, then too bad. I'm just sick and tired. And if the Republicans on the other side don't want to come on, too bad.
Sure.
Because if they want us just to sit here and basically to write the picture or draw the picture or say what's going on, and they think differently, the table's available for them.
Right, right.
It's available for them. It should be available to everyone. And by the way, we've got only about 2 minutes left.
Okay. Well, you know, I think it's important that all of us not just say we want to be bipartisan, we want to talk with each other, but to come on and talk, you know, and this is a forum that it can be done. And I think it could turn out to be an important forum.
And I think tonight is just us, and maybe next week also, or how, we're not sure as of yet, just to get to know one another. But also there are going to be times when it's going to get a little heated, and we've got to give each other sort of like the nod to move on or something like that, because I'm not, you know, I can't keep taking beatings from Democrats where I should be harder on you about something. But that's just the way it's going to work out. But I'm glad you're here. Now you have a Facebook site?
I do, and so as much as I know how Facebook works, I think if you just go and type in my name, you'll come up with the site. Certainly, if anybody has any ideas about how we should work on this show and they want to come on the show, they can send me an email. My email address is fairly straightforward. It's just my name spelled out, William L. O'Brien, no punctuation, no apostrophe or anything, @gmail.com. And so, you know, if anyone has an idea about how we should go about attracting guests, or if they want to be a guest, or if they have an idea for a show, send me an email.
And if you'd like to come on and take 5 minutes just to come on, we'll give you 5 minutes if you're mad at us about something or you're happy about it. You can have 5 minutes. I mean, a lot of people are a little afraid of getting up here. I also have a Facebook, which type in my name. Also, I have a website. It's gidgeworld.com, which is an art website. I also have an email address, which is kgidge@aol.com. Cell phone number, 603-864-9332. This has been The Art of Politics, and I'll tell you, I think we're going to have some fun.
This was fun already.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
All right.
Great.